What up, what up, what up, you guys? It's Blackwing 2040. Welcome back to the Power Rangers Marathon. Today, we are at the end of the Saban Era. But we're still in the GOAT era, though. We're still in the midst of the GOAT era, but we're almost kind of done with the GOAT era, though. So it's kind of sad. But fret not, we're still making headway, and we're closing off the chapter of the Saban Era. And to do that, we are going to be reviewing the 10th anniversary season of Power Rangers Wild Force. And I have fond memories of Wild Force growing up, waking up on Saturday mornings on ABC Family just to watch the episodes, especially on ABC Kids, because I know there's a lot of saying how this is technically the first Disney season of Power Rangers, but in my mind, I still consider Ninja Storm the first Disney season. If I'm gonna be honest, because first half of the season aired on Fox Kids, while the remainder of the show aired on ABC Family and ABC Kids. But I still consider this Saban Era because basically, Forever Red has basically all the Saban Era Rangers in there anyway. So that's all I'm gonna say. But let's talk about these suits. They're not the best looking suits, but they're okay. I love the helmets. The helmets are basically like the best part of the suits, if I would say. But I mean, the gold trimming, but actually I kind of do like the gold trimming because it gives that designation of which ranger they are. Their animal icon on the left, and the gold sash goes right down the middle. It's pretty cool. They're not the best looking suits, but I find them they're cool to look at. I would definitely say. And the theme song, there was actually two. When I mean two, at the end of Power Rangers Time Force, there was a little teaser of Wild Force, and it played. That was originally supposed to be the Wild Force intro. The intro that we have in the show, that's the official intro. So if you can find, there's videos of it everywhere on YouTube. You can just go on YouTube and type in Power Rangers Wild Force original opening, and you'll find it. It's actually pretty good. Imagine if they actually did decide to stick with that one and instead use the one that we had. But it is what it is. The theme is awesome. So let's begin our story. Our story begins with Cole, who we don't really know much about as of yet, but lives with a tribe, and the tribe tells him it's time for him to fulfill his destiny. They give him a picture of some parents and an animal crystal, the red line animal crystal. So Cole travels to the city of Turtle Cove in search of these two individuals, but has no luck. Suddenly he runs into our rangers of the show: Taylor, the Yellow Ranger; Max, the Blue Ranger; Danny, the Black Ranger; and Alyssa, the White Ranger. We don't have a Pink Ranger this season. So Cole turns out it's his destiny to be the leader of the Power Rangers Wild Force, since he inherits the animal crystal, and they control these sentient Zords called Wild Zords. And if I may say, the Wild Zords are fantastic Zords, especially with them being the first CGI Zords in Ranger history. So they morph using these cell phones. We get cell phone morphers now, called growl phones. They morph. They fight off an evil group known as Orgs, monsters who are charged to pollute the planet, and they are led by Master Org, the leader of the Org army, and with a little assistance from Jindrax and Toxica, known as Duke Orgs. Now, there's a specific range when it comes to Orgs and Duke Orgs. Regular Orgs, they have more than one horn, but Duke Orgs, they only have one. They have one horn, singular horn. And as for Master Org, he only has one horn as well. But again, we'll get back to that. So our opening arc is basically us, getting to know the characters, and we also find out that there's other Wild Zords out there in the world. Because in the beginning, we have Red Lion, Yellow Eagle, Blue Shark, Black Bison, and the White Tiger. As the story progresses, we get introduced to the other Zords like the Elephant Zord, the Gorilla Zord, the Bear Zords, Black Bear and Polar Bear, and the Giraffe Zord. And that's basically the opening arc. But the next arc This is where things get very high octane, if I would say. So Master Org releases a very well-known Org general named Nazor, and Nazor releases a Duke Org known as Zaraku. And I'll go deep into Zaraku's as a character when I start talking about tech characters. Zaraku's basically a Duke Org who's been reawakened to carry out 3,000 years of vengeance. So Zaraku basically is getting a full-on revenge onslaught against the Rangers, and every time the Rangers encounter him, they get their butts handed to them over and over and over again, constantly. They can barely lay a scratch on him, barely. And Zaraku has his own fair share of Zords called Dark Wild Zords. Hammerhead Shark, the Wolf Zord, and the Alligator Zord. And they do everything as he says. So, and anytime the Rangers get beat, they end up losing their Zords. Alyssa loses the Elephant Zord, Max loses the Giraffe Zord, and Taylor loses the Bear Zords. And every time Zaraku holds a bear animal crystal in his hand, he squishes it, and then it just turns into like, it's kind of, I would say, it looks like a snowball, I would say. And then those particular Zords turn evil. And all of his wild Zords can form together the Predazord, which is basically his own personal Megazord. And it is cool, if I might add. So later on, as the story progresses, Princess Shayla, who is the team's mentor, tells the Rangers that Zaraku is actually Merrick, an ancient warrior from the past who fought with other warriors in the 3,000 years ago in the past to fight against Master Orc. And turns out Zaraku is Merrick, and Merrick is actually under curse by a wolf mask, because during the ancient times, Merrick needed a special power to defeat Master Orc. So he sought out the power of the wolf mask, put it on, and used the powers of 3 Zords to destroy Master Orc. After he defeated Master Orc, he ends up cursed, fully turning himself into Zaraku. And I also forgot to mention that another person that plays a role in this arc is Animus, who's basically the ancestor of the Wild Zords. So after Master Orc, killed Animus back then, he comes back as a mirage to Zaraku to tell him, he goes the whole Mufasa spiel with, "Remember, Zaraku, you must remember." He goes full on Mufasa with that speech. And, the Rangers are able to defeat Zaraku, finally get their, well, they don't officially get their Zords back, but the curse is broken, and Merrick is still considered to walk alone. So he tries to take on Master Org by himself, but doesn't fall through. And Master Org ends up taking the animal crystals that were taken from the Rangers and create this monster called a Quadra Org. And Merrick decides to redeem himself by taking down the Quadra Org, but much to no avail. So the Red Lion sees the goodness in Merrick's heart and returns the animal crystals back, his animal crystals back to Merrick, and Merrick becomes the Silver Wolf Ranger. It's crazy how sometimes it's so many classifications of Merrick's title is weird. Some people say Lunar Wolf, some people say Howling Wolf. I'm like, which one is it? But whichever you prefer, Merrick becomes the 6th Ranger of the team. He gets his own jacket, he gets his own bike, he helps the Rangers out whenever they need him, and he goes wherever the wind takes him, so on and so forth. Now, as our story progresses, we learn something about Master Org. Master Org is actually a friend of Cole's parents. Cole's parents were actually researchers in search of the Animarium, which is basically a floating turtle island, and that's also the Rangers' main base of operations. So, when they were searching for the Animarium, Victor Adler, who is Master Org's human self, finds the last remnants of Master Org, which are basically these seeds with plant-like vines in them. So, he has a huge grudge against Cole's parents, because before he turned evil, he had a huge, love interest in Cole's mother. He wanted to propose to her, but Cole's father came into the picture. They got married, they had their child, and he just just built up so much anger inside, more and more and more, until he just had enough. So he ate the seeds. It gave him the power of the Master Orc, and he killed Cole's parents in cold blood. So Cole basically defeats Master Orc by himself, or so he thinks, and that's the end of him for now. And then later on, as our story progresses, we get introduced to another Duke Orc named Mandoloc. And I would say this is another one of the bad parts of Wild Force, because this arc is basically the Animus arc, and we're introduced to this small boy named Kite, who turns out is a human form for Animus. Now, my problem with this arc is that Animus, he entrusted the Wild Zords, to humans to protect the Earth. And then when Mandoloc tricks Kite into showing, him the pollution and everything that's been happening on the Earth, Kite / Animus gets so angry, he takes the Wild Zords away and says, I should never have entrusted humans to protect the Earth, leaving the Rangers defenseless. And then later on in the arc, turns out he was just testing them to see if they were worthy. I'm like, dude, they've been doing such a good job the whole time. What are you doing? I don't understand. Literally, I don't. I really hated that arc during the show. But fret not. The season is also popular for two of the best team-ups in the Ranger franchise. Reinforcements from the Future and Forever Red. And also, shout out to my good friend Layla Nolan, who is a huge lover of Reinforcements from the Future. It's our favorite team-up. We talk about it a lot. If you guys already know how I feel about Reinforcements from the Future. It's the best. And same thing about Forever Red. It's the best anniversary team up to this day. That we haven't really gotten a great anniversary team up to that level of Forever Red. Hopefully we do somewhere in the near future. Here's hoping. And so in the final act, Mandoloc sends in another Duke Orc named Onikage. He's basically like a ninja. He's basically like a ninja kind of Duke Orc. And Toxica is trying her best to impress Mandoloc, and Onikage says Mandoloc will, give you the props that you deserve if you kidnap Princess Shayla. So the only way for them to get onto the Animarium is if, she cuts her horn. So Onikage cuts her horn, she sneaks onto the Animarium, she kidnaps Princess Shayla, and then turns out she was been tricked, because Onikage quote-unquote said that if you cut off a Duke Orc's horn, it will grow back. And Mandoloc was like, are you dumb? Everyone knows that you cut off an orc's horn, it does not grow back. So Toxica's life force is destroyed, and after that, Master Org shows up in full Org blood, like straight up, not full blood, but he has an actual Org horn, because in the beginning he was just wearing like a wig with a horn and a fake, third eyeball, but straight up he is full on Org now. And he destroys Mandoloc, and Onikage was working for Master Org on the down low. See, this arc is full of twists and turns. So Jindrax is able to, rescue Toxica by, freeing her from wherever she's from, by literally fishing her out, literally. And so Toxica and Jindrax decide they want to do some good for themselves, and they help the Rangers, seal the Nexus, which is basically the lair for the Orcs. So as they try to, seal the Nexus, they come across the three, shadows of the three Orc generals: Mandoloc, Nazor, and another Orc general, but that he only appears in one episode, Retnax, but he really doesn't do much. So the Rangers defeat the Orc generals, they seal the Nexus, Master Orc is quote-unquote defeated, and, Toxica and Jindrax leave on a journey, a self-discovery journey, and the Rangers, they celebrate, or so they think. And then Master Orc shows up in his final form, leads a full-out destruction on Turtle Cove. The Rangers are getting their butts kicked. Animus comes down to lend a hand. Merrick gets in his Megazord to help Animus. And Master Orc is destroying the Wild Zords. Starting off with Animus, he's gone, destroys all 3 of Merrick's Zords, they're gone, and then the Rangers, head to the Animarium for safekeeping. But Master Orc ends up on the Animarium and slays every single Wild Zord, every last one of them. But of course, they still try to fight and protect themselves, but it isn't enough, because as each one fell, the final Wild Zords remained, and Master Orc laid waste to all 5 of them. And the animal crystals are also shattered. So the Animarium crashes back down to Turtle Cove. Master Orc is leading a full-on assault in Turtle Cove. It's pouring rain and everything, and the Rangers head out into Turtle Cove to defeat him. And it is straight up awesomeness. I would say this is probably one of the coolest finales in some ways. Certain points in this finale is great. We get like a cool suitless roll call in the rain, might I add you. And all the Wild Zords come back. The Rangers get their powers back again. They combine their powers, defeat Master Orc, and the world is saved. So after their Ranger duties are done, Princess Shayla said there's no reason for them to keep their Ranger gear, so she asks for their jackets and their growl phones. They get them back to her, and the Animarium rises back up into the sky. So that's pretty much the story of the Rangers. And at the end, Cole makes peace with Dr. Adler, who is he's at the gravesite, telling his parents that, the Earth is safe. And then he shows peace, and he makes peace with Dr. Adler. And Cole decides to use his animal skills to, just to communicate with animals. Taylor returns back to the Air Force. Max and Danny decide to travel the world. Merrick goes on a soul-searching journey for himself, because he has a lot to atone for, but he's not going alone, because Zaraku is still alive, and he decides to, tag along with him, because they both have sins to atone for. And Alyssa, she goes to college, graduates college, and decides to become a teacher, and that's the end of Power Rangers Wild Force. So, let's talk about some characters. Let's start off with Cole. Cole, he has a drive that really, of course, one of the team's main mottos is never give up. That's what Max and Danny always say. But Cole, he has a constant drive to, protect the animals, protect humanity, to protect anything. And that's his main motivation. And of course, with the revelation of how Master Orc was, his parents' killer, and how he turned down such he didn't want to go down that path of killing Master Orc as well, because killing Master Orc isn't going to bring his parents back anyway. So he makes peace. He has that instinct. I would say he's kind of like the Wolverine of Power Rangers, because he can hear, search inside people's hearts to see if they're truly good or not. And that's like his superpower. And Cole is a pretty good Red Ranger in my book. He's really cool. Of course, I love Cole's interaction with the other Red Rangers in Forever Red. It's like a big eye opening for him, because he's just in awe of so many Rangers, because of course he already teamed up with Wes and Eric, but having to meet all the other past Rangers, Jason, Tommy, TJ, Andros, Leo, Carter, Orico, it was a cool moment. And I always laugh every time Jason just calls Cole a rookie. Jason was so full of himself in that team up. Alright, next, let's talk about Taylor. Taylor was she was the first Wild Force Ranger to, start up the team, because how her origin started out, she was an Air Force pilot. She crash landed on the Animarium while she encountering the Yellow Eagle Zord, and Princess Shayla told her that she will be in charge. She will be not in charge. She will become the Yellow Wild Force Ranger. And she does kind of butt heads with Cole a lot in the beginning, but slowly on as the show progressed, she understands him. She comes to terms with his leadership, because originally Taylor was the leader of the team, but as soon as Cole stepped in, she became the second stringer. But overall, they have a good interaction with themselves, and they understand each other. It's really great. And Cole likes to motivate his team a lot. And that's I would definitely give Cole and Taylor props for it. Next is Max. Max was the third Ranger to join the team. And Max always kind of gets bullied a lot because they keep calling him a kid. But on the downside for Max, he doesn't really get most of his, development comes with his interactions with Danny because him and Danny are like best buds. But Max, he does go from being like, not saying he's a kid, but he does step he does has his shining moments, but like I said, his only shining moments are only when he's around with Danny. And speaking of Danny, let's talk about him for a second. I wish they did more with his character because he had two focused episodes where he was interacting with this girl named Kendall, who's a florist. Danny's also, a guy who loves gardening. And, in the episode where, Kendall finds out that Danny is a ranger and everything, she, realized that you shouldn't worry about me. You have other things to, take care of, like protecting the earth. I wish they went deeper into that, especially during the finale of all things. Because if you introduce, like, a recurring character in the show that's sort of like, a motivational piece for one of the Rangers, bring them back. Do something with them. Because if you don't, they just disappear into the abyss. What's there to happen with them? That's one of the things I wish they'd done with Danny. Now, Alyssa, Alyssa's, she's a tough one. She's pretty tough. She's like the den mother of the team. Like, she's always, putting up with Danny and Max's antics. And I would say she's kind of a bit of the smart. She's in college while also doing ranger duty. So I'll give her props for that, trying to get her education while we're saving the world. That's tough, if I would say. But the one focus episode where she shines is, the one about her father and how her father was the one that trained her to become a good fighter. After that, no development from her at all. I mean, there's some episodes with her, in school and everything. And of course, at the end of the show, she graduates, she becomes a teacher. What they should have did more with her, if I would say. They should have done a lot more. Alright, next is Merrick. Merrick, I love his character. Being the whole lone wolf thing, it fits his persona perfectly. And another thing about Merrick is that he and Princess Shayla were in love with each other, even back during 3,000 years ago. And now currently he has to keep playing the flute with Princess Shayla to the Deer Zord, because the Deer Zord was a special Zord that Merrick, he formed a bond with. And sorry. His really Merrick shining moments are, of course, during the Zaraku arc, his rivalry with Nazor when Nazor came back for that brief moment, and that's basically it. But I do love how they decided to give, something for him to do at the end of the show, to walk on a discovery path for himself. Zaraku's right there with him. It's a good send-off for the both of them, I would say. Now, let's talk about, Ranger allies. Princess Shayla. She's not a bad mentor. She's basically she's basically their guide. She tells the Rangers about she's like their info book on the orgs, how to defeat them, what happened in the past 3,000 years, because after during that great battle of 3,000 years, she was asleep, and then millennia later she wakes up, and that's how she recruited the Rangers. I always seem to always forget that one point in the show where she's actually able to defend herself because she can fight. I always keep forgetting that Princess Shayla can fight. But she's not a bad mentor. She's just there. That's all I can. She's just there. She gives the Rangers help in certain cases, but doesn't really do much. Now, Animus, you guys already know how I feel about Animus. I didn't like the Animus arc, but Animus as like a Megazord, he's dope. But the whole thing with Kite and everything, that was pointless. There was no need for that at all. I wish that we didn't get that. But Animus as like a Megazord, he's a cool Megazord, of course, but the kite situation, no. I did not like that at all. Master Orc. I kind of feel bad for the guy because, dealing with, someone who doesn't notice him at all, and he's, kind of about to pour his heart out to this woman, Cole's mother, but she doesn't even notice that either. But it's basically like a poor soul that steeps deep into the darkness, if I would say. And, that darkness basically consumed him, and it was his way of getting revenge on the people who did not care about him at all. So he's basically a suffered soul, if I would say. He is a villain, yes, granted, but a villain who is basically, he's more so suffering. I wouldn't say not suffering on the ways of like Ranzik's suffering. Ranzik's, situation is totally different. But Master Orc, he's just, suffering because a woman never gave him the attention he wanted, so now kills him, and now he has all this power and decides, alright, I'm going to take over the world now. Let's do it. And yeah, but I can honestly say he's a savage villain. He's suffering, but he is evil. Like, straight up burning evil. Like, he doesn't care. He really doesn't care at all. He only cares for someone whenever they do a really good job, but other than that, he doesn't really, care for any of his like even, some maybe Jindrax and Toxica to a certain extent. And speaking of Jindrax and Toxica, they're basically the comedic duo of this season. Jindrax has a big rivalry with, Taylor, and Toxica has this big rivalry with Alyssa because Alyssa always keeps calling Toxica a grandma because she's she's quote unquote old. It's the witty banter between these two, and every time they fight the Rangers, it's fun. They have great chemistry together. It's just awesome. And having them, instead of being destroyed by the Rangers, instead they get, they redeem themselves and decide to, do good for a change. And I kind of like that about them. Now, Zaraku. Zaraku is one of my favorite generals, and I like to call Zaraku the king of butt whoopings. Because Zaraku is, that whole arc, Zaraku just mops the floor with the Rangers over and over, and with no mercy as well. I mean, sometimes there was a point in the arc where Alyssa got injured and Zaraku was able to, he bandaged her, gave her, bandaged her up and everything. But he's brutal. He is really brutal. And I kind of like, it's interesting how his power kind of rises and diminishes during the phases of the moon. Because if it's in a full moon, his power is at full on 100%. Daytime, of course, his power is just not at full strength, but he could still mop the floor with the Rangers easily. So that's why I love Zaraku so much. Next up, General Nazor. Nazor, he's a very manipulative kind of general, and he's that one general that actually does what he's told. He always has a plan. And then of course when he came back with his his Super Nazor form, which is very I'll admit it's kind of terrifying, but it's still very, very powerful, if I might add. But Nazor's a pretty cool and calculating kind of general. And the last character to talk about, Mandoloc. I hated Mandoloc so much. I did not like him at all. He's just like that one villain that just would not shut up. I could not stand it. Like, even just looking at him, I'm just like, can you get this guy off my screen, please? I don't like this guy at all. I mean, he treats Toxica and Jindrax like dirt a lot because they can't do anything right. But other than that, I don't like him. I really don't like Mandoloc at all. I really don't. So to all wrap that all up, my rating for Power Rangers Wild Force, as much as I love this season, especially back in the day, I'm gonna have to say this season is pretty raw. It's a raw season. Has two epic team ups, the best team ups in the Ranger franchise, a super cool arc with the Zaraku arc. The only thing that kind of hurts the show is the Animus kite arc. That's the only thing I would say that kind of hurts it. And as I would say, when it comes to development, if a certain character doesn't, get the full development that they deserve, it's nice to see that the team develops as a whole. Because that's kind of a good thing if I would see. If I'm not noticing any, developmental change in a certain characters, if the team, if one ranger develops, the team develops, and that's pretty much all that matters. So that's my review of Power Rangers Wild Force. In the comment section below, what were your favorite things about Power Rangers Wild Force? Who was your favorite characters? What was your favorite? What did you like? What did you dislike about Power Rangers Wild Force? Leave a comment in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and keep out for the next review, which is going to be Power Rangers Ninja Storm, the beginning of the Disney era. I'm looking forward to Ninja Storm because I haven't watched Ninja Storm in but so long. Actually, in like 4 years, to be honest. But I'm looking forward to that. Keep an eye out for that. And as always, I am Vengeance. I am Darkness. I am Blackwing. Stay golden, and may the power protect you.